Okay, Professor Krush here, and today we are going to tackle the challenge of doing an 11-step grayscale. And the one that I have here is one that I have used for a number of years. And now with the COVID world that we're living in, I decided to recreate the whole file digitally. And the only difference is that I've made it actually a little bit bigger, wider, should I say. So it's 3 inches wide as opposed to 2 inches wide. There's still half-inch intervals for the 11 steps. And this step that runs down the middle is the same too. This is a vertical band. So while this is 10, 20, 30, 40% in terms of gray, this one is 35% and runs the vertical band from top to bottom. And that's an exercise in understanding how color doesn't exist by itself, value doesn't exist by itself. So when we see it against different backgrounds, it changes our perception, how our brain kind of takes in that experience. And in this case, the fun with this is that clearly at the top it looks darker against the light, and toward the bottom it looks lighter against the dark, and yet it's the exact same, got some paint here, exact same band that's running down the whole entire length. Okay, so this is the finished piece. This is what it would actually look like. This is what it used to look like. And the good news is this is not what it looks like. This actually is a grayscale in 25 steps, which is scary, kind of brutal. It's very hard to even do it in 11 steps, let alone 25 steps. And in terms of traditional grayscales, like on a color wheel, it runs through the numbers 1 through 10. And black is the darkest, which is value 1, going through value 10, which is white. A lot of old traditional art books also have scales of 1 through 9, with 1 again being the darkest to light. I've completely disregarded that and gone to 11 steps. Okay, and the reason that I look at 11 steps is that it ties into the way you work and think on the computer. Here's white, here's 10%, 20%, running all the way up to what would be black. If it was a computer, this also might be a color. When we work on the computer, we think in terms of percents and opacity. So if we have black, a 50%, if you went to 50% opacity, here's where you would end up with your 50% value, 50% black. If you had 10% of black on your opacity on the computer, it would look like this here, which is like a 10% gray. So we're not screening colors, we're mixing colors, and we're adding white. So by adding white to this, we can get our range. But the good news, again, I believe this is a better system, even though the numbers go in reverse, because it's not a 1, it's a 10%. 10% through 90% to black. It represents, again, if you were working digitally, the screen that's happening on your computer, how you see the color. If it was a printing process, ink on paper, something like 20% would be a very fine screen, small dots, because there's very little ink coverage of that color, so it comes off like 20%, a 20% value of that color. This measurement sheet is online in the assignment folder for those of you enrolled in VIS 114, and this just shows the measurements: 3 inches wide, 5.5 inches tall, okay, which is 11 again times a ½ inch, which is 5.5 inches. So white through black. Here just showing the ½ inch intervals and showing that the width of this band is a ½ inch. So to get this thing started, you'd be wanting to lay out, I think the best way to do it is to lay out this grid of that black underneath there. Lay out this grid in terms of making this guidelines. So these guidelines are all 3 inches apart. Without using a T-square, I just held it to the edge and went 3 to 6, out to the edge, again 3 to 6, and run 2 vertical lines, and those are our outside lines. Then what I'm doing is going through there. After I draw those lines, the vertical lines, I'm going through there and I'm putting tick marks at every 1/2 inch. Okay, every 1/2 inch, running down the whole page. I'm doing more than what I need. And then after those tick marks are all in place, okay, is where I'm going through and I'm literally drawing left to right. I was using an angle so that I could kind of see that it's perpendicular, and running down and putting a line there, every 1/2 inch, using that tick mark and drawing a whole line through it. Now notice, very important, that I'm going past the 3 inches. I'm going past substantially, like close to a 1/2 inch past the amount, so that later on, which this has already been used, so bear with me, I don't have it as it was done before, but it's in the step-by-step images in the assignment folder. I'm doing that so when these get painted over, these extended marks act like guidelines so that I can eventually take a razor blade and hold them to line them up, cut through here, and be able to see the guidelines still. If I only went right up to the edge and painted over that, then now I have no guideline for the top and bottom going across. Only guidelines going from the top this way running down the sides. All right, so that, to me, that's the best way to do it. And what you do is paint every other one. So this is like 10%, 20%, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. And then there's blocks here for, let me move that up. There's blocks here for extra ones because nobody will probably do this perfect the first time out. I tend to paint the white, then I paint the 50%, and I paint the 100% to like divide and conquer. So if I do a 50 and a 10%, okay, and I'm comfortable with that, then I can lay in the 30, and it's in between those. If you do what a lot of us kind of think in terms of almost like common sense, pattern is that we will just go 10%, 20, 30, and we'll keep making the paint darker and darker, and we think we will absolutely control it well. And what will happen is by the time we get up to like 70%, we have something that's almost black, and we've run out of room to keep going to the additional values because we went too fast from light to dark. So that is the reason to divide and conquer. Do a 10%, do a 50, do 100, maybe do a 70 and 80 or an 80, split between the 50 and the 10 and do a 30, and so on. So as you fill in these spots, it's easier to see how those tones are going to lay in there. To the side, this is that vertical part that's going to run up the middle, and that is going to lay on top of all those other chips once they've been cut out. So again, I'm showing you the after effects of this sheet. This obviously was all painted, and I've already cut these things out, including the one that would be the 35% gray for the vertical band. Okay, and you know, that's it for that. But trust me, do some extras. Do not try and paint under any circumstances. Try and paint something and then paint right next to it. Okay, if you try and paint right next to something that you've already painted, like say from here to here, no way. Nobody is that good that you're going to control that brush and you're going to have a really nice straight even distinction between one tone to the next tone. So the only way is to paint every other one, cut these out neatly with an X-Acto knife, and then it comes to mixing. I mean, that comes to mixing. I'm showing you that afterwards, but before that got started, you know, here was the black, here's the white, starting to mix these down. I have a 35. The other sheet I no longer have, but the other sheet had a 50, and then I went to a 10 and a 30, and so on. This was mixing down when I did the 35%. And this, of course, is the palette paper, easy to clean. Keep the brushes clean, keep the palette knife clean, keep changing water, because as you put these things down, you want those tones to be nice and clean. So once these things were initially cut out and I had those chips on the side, I'm painting the back with paper cement or rubber cement, pasting it down into position, and then using a rubber cement pickup to kind of clean up any excess glue. All right. Keep in mind that these bands run the whole length of 3 inches. This vertical band is afterwards. That's the one that's between the 30 and the 40. And it lays on top of all those. That's how it splits it. I've had students in the past actually take the time to make individual chiclets on each side and then put like this in the middle. And I was like, are you crazy? You're creating all that extra work where you can just lay this band on top of it. Okay, and this sheet also has a reference in terms of keys, where high key tends to be light and the mood is upbeat. That's through this range. Mid key, which is more serious, reflects less light. And then the dark key, where it reflects very little light, and this is more like a somber mood in terms of what these values represent. So that's it. When one is completely done with the project, this is what it will look like. This is what goes into the notebook. This is a PDF document that's in the assignment. You can print that. You can print as many of them as you need. And don't be shy with mixing your paints. If you have to keep mixing extra chips to work with at the end because you start to realize, wow, I thought I have it nailed, and my 30 looks almost the same as the 40, and the 40 should be darker. Break the paint out. Make some more chips. All right, I think that kind of covers it. So again, 11-step grayscale, and this is what it would look like when all is said and done. And good luck, and enjoy the challenge and enjoy the process. Thank you.